Hi guys, it's your host again, Josh from Recovery Talks 24/7. Just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that's been following me throughout this podcast journey. We've had some amazing guests that have come on so far that have just been shared openly about their journeys of addiction, or maybe just their journeys of mental health, or just the recovery journey of anything really. And I just want to kind of let people know, whoever's listening as well, if you are interested or would like to come on and share your story, then please do get in contact with me. My contact details are on the podcast Spotify, if you have a look on there. Um, Now, we are sponsored by a company called Money Wellness. They are a debt management company and they do absolutely amazing work. They supported me to help me get recovery through my debt. And they helped me get on a debt relief order, and I'm now on that amazing path of being debt free, and it's just been absolutely phenomenal. So whoever's listening, whoever is struggling with any form of debt, then please do get in contact with Money Wellness. They will definitely help you out. Don't be afraid, give them a call, and just let them support you, because they supported me. So today we have an amazing guest of us. Her name is Jazz. And she has kindly accepted the offer to come on and share her story. Now, Jazz, obviously we've spoken before previously, and you shared a little bit of your story with me. And I was really excited to get you on and for you to share your story with everybody else that's going to be listening to this. So without further ado, let me introduce Jazz. So can you share a bit about your background and how your journey is with alcohol and drug use
Of
began?
course. Um,
Yeah.
Beyond. My name's Jazz. I'm about to turn 25. I always feel that's kind of relevant because when I was sort of getting into recovery, I've struggled to find sort of younger people speaking about it quite a lot. So, bit about my journey and background. So I'm originally from South London. I had a bit of a interesting, traumatic childhood, is one way of putting it. Um, I've had a long history of struggling with my mental health, which kind of goes hand in hand with addiction. So I've been clean and sober since November 2020. So coming up to 4 years, it'll be this year, which is amazing. I've got a diagnosis of autism and ADHD as well. Yeah.
Speak about yourself.
So
That's amazing.
how to go into. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you're 4 years clean. That is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm sure there's a lot of people at home that are kind of probably going to listen to this and they're like, 4 years clean. How can somebody get to 4 years clean? And I'm sure they're probably going to sit back and go, wow, throughout your story, they're going to be like, how did you get through that? So where did it all sort of begin for you? How did you get into your addiction in general? Do you want to maybe share from growing up as a child to where you are now?
yeah, I was surrounded by addiction in the people around me. My mum was an alcoholic, and she unfortunately passed away in 2020 from her struggles with alcohol. There's a lot of addiction in my family, whether that be alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, you name it, it's there. So it was always around me. I struggled a lot when I was younger. My home environment was difficult. And I remember even being like really small kid, I always thought I was different from a really young age. I was like, I don't get other kids. I was always desperate to fit in, but I never quite did, and never understood why. So I spent from a really young age, before I could even name what anxiety was or what depression was, I was anxious. Um, I just couldn't regulate my own feelings. And I was having awful panic attacks probably by the age of 7, 8. And then as I got older, I was diagnosed with autism at 11. But I'd always had quite an addictive personality, even from that age. Like if I liked something, that was it. Whether that was a food, whether that was a hobby, it was all or nothing with me. And I was always quite a perfectionist as well. Like to everyone around me in primary school, especially, I was that typical, I don't want to say high achiever, but I was like, I would always do my absolute best in whatever I could. I was never a problem in school. School wasn't a problem for me, but I found it really difficult to spend the days masking and trying to fit in. And then I left primary school. The issues with my family at home got worse. And then that transition to secondary school was a horrible time as it is. So I was battling a lot of mental health issues as well. And my physical health, I had a lot of issues with that. So I think my addiction issues probably started with I developed an eating disorder at about 13 years old. I was on quite a self-destructive path. I was harming myself from quite a young age. And I think the first real addiction I had was, I guess, with an eating disorder, it was an escape to me. I felt like everything around me in my life was out of control. I was in mainstream secondary school. I dropped out of mainstream secondary school by the end of year 7. I ended up in like one-to-one tuition, medical school units. So it was a bit of a mess of a time even then. But I could control what I ate. And that became a real thing for me. And it was 100% an addiction. I didn't see it at the time, but it had me in its grasp, which obviously made the mental health and physical health issues worse. I started drinking quite young, probably concerningly young actually, but at sort of family parties, barbecues, you have a little bit. And it was about 13, I think, I actually started drinking. And again, it was that escape. It was, for a moment, I don't feel as much. I think it was chasing that sort of numb feeling. So it started with alcohol, and it just sort of, as I got older, it just spiraled. And I think the interesting thing I found is that the first time I tried a lot of things, whether that was alcohol or substances, I knew from that first time, I was like, that's it, it's got me. Yeah. So it was really hard. And I think when you're surrounded by people at home that have got that same mindset of, I think if you're not surrounded by people suffering with mental illness and addiction themselves, someone might say, hang on a minute, there's something not quite right here, but it was normal. And I was desperate to escape, and I would do anything I could to escape. And it just, it took over incredibly quickly. And that is what shocked me a lot, is because of what I grew up around. I remember always as a kid saying I'd never drink, I'd never do drugs. I've seen what it does to people. I wouldn't do that. And then I did.
Yeah. And I think from what you were saying then as well, because obviously being brought up around that consistently, like you said, it just becomes the norm. There is nothing wrong with it, and obviously, as we both can agree, and I'm sure listeners at home as well, alcohol is such a hard thing at the moment to get off. Reason being is because it's legal, it's not illegal. You're surrounded by it 24/7. You've got your local pubs down the road. It's like, oh, you just have a drink, it's okay. But until, what really kind of caught me is when you just said that you had that drink and you knew at that moment it got you. So you were saying about what, as soon as it got you, was you still going through some form of a mental health, or was this something that was gradually going to be getting worse? Or was this something that you knew about from a young age? Because obviously you said as well that you did suffer with an eating disorder. So was this something that came before anything to do with addiction?
So I think as the mental health got worse, it progressively got worse as I got older, my mental health, and then my addiction issues got worse. And I think it was almost like a self-fueling cycle. The mental health getting worse was making the addiction worse, but then being addicted to things was affecting my mental health, and I just went round and round and round. And I think there's not like a specific trigger point that I could recall. It was like something happened and then I did it. It was almost like a pressure cooker. Like everything was just building up and building up and building up. And it was almost like a switch in my head from, I'm never going to touch it, I'm not going to do it, to that's it. It's all I am now. And the eating disorder was something I suffered with on and off until probably 2019. It was also fueled by the minute I was doing substances, specifically stimulants, that was impacting my weight as well. So it was, it felt like I could never get out of it. And like touching on what you said there with the alcohol was a really hard one to get off, is it's everywhere. You can't just delete a number and you can't get hold of something, or you stop seeing those friends that do it and you can't get it anymore. It's everywhere. You go into every single shop, you can get it on like delivery apps now, you can get it delivered to your house. So I think that's why I never viewed the alcohol as such a problem, because it was it's normalized in society as well, and normalized in the environment I was in. It was only when the alcohol stopped doing what I wanted it to do that I then moved on to other things, and then again and again and again, like stepping up.
Yeah. And that's what these substances and alcohol does. I think we can all remember that feeling of, it's the warmth feeling. It's like, oh, you're feeling that void. But then once you filled that void with that particular thing, aka alcohol, and then you start going on to harder things, then and then you just end up chasing it constantly. Like you said as well, it feels like you're just constantly going round and round in a circle. I use a term like you're always on the roundabout, and it's like, it takes you forever to get off because you're like, oh, yeah, but I need to keep filling that void all the time. But thank you for sharing that as well. So your impact this has had now, I'm gathering the impact it's had of the alcohol and the drug abuse has affected you with relationships with people, friends, family. That must have had a massive effect.
It did. It affected so much. As I said, it went from alcohol to I'll smoke a bit of weed. And my family at the time, my parents didn't like that, but their attitude almost was, we cannot stop you. You're going to do what you're going to do, and you will find a way to do it. So my parents knew about that. My family on a whole knew about that. And it just progressed. I then went on to Class A's, which even to this day, a lot of my family never knew about. Admittedly, they might now. Sorry about that if you're listening. Because I knew the impact it would have. So my parents knew, again, hated it, but again, I was going to do it. I left home when I was quite young and moved away from London completely, and moved in with other family who knew about my mental health issues, knew about the eating disorder, knew about how much I was struggling, but never quite knew what I was doing. They were, again, quite big drinkers, so that I could 100%, nobody judged me. I could get away with that. But I spent a year living with other relatives and using every day different substances every single day. And they didn't know, which is crazy, given that I was in their house, under their roof, with them. And I almost became so good at hiding it that they just assumed it was how I was. Where my mental health's always been up and down, or I'll have really depressed episodes and really elevated episodes, it kind of hid it from people. It had a huge impact on friendships. I lost so many friends because they could see what I was doing and I was destroying myself, but I didn't see it that way. I saw it as, you're just telling me what to do. You're not in my shoes. Like, all right, fine, I won't talk to you. And that then meant my group of friends changed when I moved, especially, and I became friends with people that, again, were doing the same things. So it became so normalized in those circles. But it was causing a lot of issues with the family I was living with. They didn't understand how I could be so nice and kind and pleasant one minute and so vile and horrible the next. And that would be obviously on the come down from various It was specifically stimulants. Once I was diagnosed with ADHD, it made sense to me why the stimulants became such an issue for me, because they essentially quietened down my mind. A lot of the people I was around who didn't have ADHD and were doing it had very different experiences to it
The opposite.
than
Yeah.
what I did. So yeah, it destroyed the relationship with the family I was living with. They weren't sure why, but they were like, "We can't have you here. You're unpredictable. You're having angry outbursts. We cannot have you here." So I ended up being homeless, and then I moved into a flat of my own, which made everything so much worse because I had no reason to hide it then. It was terrible. I distanced myself from pretty much everyone around me. Anybody that I thought could like see through what was going on, I couldn't let that facade slip, so I was really, really isolated, and it got to the point where I was having to, if I wasn't using every day, I couldn't function, which obviously had huge cost implications, health implications, and the relationships. The partner I was with at the time also had issues with addiction, which didn't help because we both became very isolated together. And then lockdown happened, which could have been possibly the worst thing.
Yeah.
And but I lost so many people. Some relationships I've managed to repair. Some I've literally had to walk away from people and accept, I have done a lot of things that I would never do now. Morally, I would never do those things. And sober, I would never do those things. But that was a very different version for me. So I have reached out to quite a lot of people and apologised, never expecting any kind of that relationship to be repaired. But I think now I am sober, I can look back and think, do you know what? I can't change it, but I can take that ownership of, I did that and that was really bad of me.
Yeah. And it's great how you was explaining it, like you said there at the end. You're able to take ownership of that, and when you're going through it, when you're in it, you're balls deep in the madness, as I always say. You don't see the harm that you're doing um, to anyone else, and you don't see the harm that you're doing to yourself. Like you said right at the beginning of your story, this is just normal. There's nothing. It's the way you were brought up. You were surrounded by people that are drinking. Then you started to learn that you just be secretive. And I think that's where it starts to go wrong for a lot of people, even people that have got a normal upbringing, let's say. As soon as you start relying on something and become secretive, then you're starting to play with fire. And you explained it beautifully. You then got your own place, and it gave you even more of an excuse to go, do you know what? I've got my own pad and I can do what I want. Um, and it must have been a real scary moment as well, though, because I remember I've gone on your TikTok, and guys, obviously, at the end, we will get Jazz to give her TikTok name, because she's got some amazing videos on there. When I say amazing, like the transformation from what you was like before, especially like on the outwards, you looked an absolute, like you was in a mess, to who you are now is amazing. But yeah, we'll definitely have to give that information out to these guys, because we want them to come and check it out, because you're a walking testimony, as I say, to so many other women that are going to be listening to this as well, that have probably or are still going through this at the moment. So your like challenges now in seeking help. You've got your own gaff. You're in this relationship. You're both secluded away in this place now. Did you face any challenges with trying to getting your first sort of point of help? Like going, do you know what, I can't do this. Was there any challenges with doing that?
So what was really difficult about that is funny enough, I spoke about it in therapy last week. It was that period of my life, I think from about 2018 to probably 2021 is a blur. There's certain like big things that stand out, but the only things that stand out in that time are like those light switch realization moments. And I did that whole typical thing of, I'll do dry January and I'll prove to everyone I can stop drinking for a month. And then it got to 1st February and you'd be in the nearest pub or shop. But to me, that was like, well, I proved it. I did a whole month. I don't have a problem. And it was it hit me that I had to sort myself out and I had to do something about it, was when my mum passed away. We'd had an up and down relationship my whole life. When she first passed away, I felt a lot of anger, and I was like, how could you do that? Why would you throw your life away? And I think about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, I was surrounded by people I shouldn't have been surrounded by. I was under the crisis team, and I told them I was at home when really I'd left home and gone to a questionable house, shall we say, and I was surrounded by people. And there's loads of us just stood in this kitchen at 3 a.m. And I had a moment, and I just thought, that's it, I'm done. And my partner at the time was like, yeah, right, like how many times have we said this? You say I'm never touching it again. Tomorrow morning when you feel shit, you will. But in that moment, it was like clarity. It was like I suddenly was like, what am I doing? I think it's unfortunate it took what happened to my mum, but it made me realise she was 40, early 40s when she passed away. And I thought, I'm going that way. That will be me. If I don't stop now, when will I? Will it be when I literally have damaged my health so much that I'm dying, or when I'm literally the next person whose funeral they're at? And I knew that I had to stop drinking to stop everything else, because the minute I had a drink, it would be, oh, but I want something else now. I knew I couldn't just stop substances and drink. And if I could drink in moderation, that may have been something I would have considered. But as I said, I'm an all or nothing person. It would be, I'm only having one, and then it'd be 3 a.m. and I'd be stood in someone's kitchen and think, I've got work in 3 hours. Why am I here? Why have I done it again? And what I found difficult is I didn't reach out for help at that point. I'd convinced even mental health professionals around me that I didn't have an issue with substances. I'd never taken a substance in my life, and I didn't drink to excess. Because it had been drummed into me that you won't get the same support if people know about your issues, which, looking back now, that is a regret of mine. I think if I was honest a lot earlier, I could have accessed better, any kind of help, because I was kind of just out there doing it on my own, winging it, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to turn to. And I was just like, I have to stop. And that was hard because it was an isolating time anyway, when you're still surrounded by people that are doing it, and then not knowing who to turn to. But I think one thing that sticks with me, I remember I was about a month clean and sober, and I had a chat with my dad. And he said, we'd accepted we were just going to lose you. And I think about that even to this day. And he said to me quite recently, he was like, I was fully planning your funeral. That gives me goosebumps every time I say it.
I'm getting goosebumps as you just said that as well.
Yeah. So I didn't seek support. It would have only been last year that I actually started going to Narcotics Anonymous, NA, AA, various ones. Because I thought, hang on, there's so many people going through it. And just because I'm this far into my journey of being sober doesn't mean it's gone, because those thoughts are still there. Not all of the time, but there are still days where I think it could be so easy. And I wouldn't, because I can now see from the outside that I don't want to go back to that. But it was amazing when I actually first went, to be sat in a room with people who know exactly how you were feeling. And they're not judging you, and they're not thinking, oh, well, you could maybe have one drink, because they've all been there. And there was nothing I could share in any of those groups that would shock a single person there.
And that's what it's like in the particular groups as well, which is amazing. And obviously, what you just said before then, with your father, when he said, he was pretty much planning of you to go, that definitely gave me goosebumps as well. Just your own parent just waiting to get that phone call. But he must be so proud of you now, though, right?
Yeah, he really is now. I don't see him as much. He still lives away from me in London. but I do still see him. And our relationship obviously has been up and down through the years, through my struggles, through various situations. But it's so lovely when I see him now. And he says that every time I see him, I'll just go, I'm just so proud of you. And at first, I remember one of the first times he said it to me, I kind of felt like, you're just saying that. Are you just saying that?
Yeah.
And now he's like, I look at you and you are an adult. And he said, I don't mean that in a horrible way. He said, but you look like you've got your life together. And not that addiction's got a look or anything's got a look, but he'd obviously seen me at my worst. And he said, yeah, he is so unbelievably proud of the things I've achieved. I think we've got like a family group chat. I probably get a message once a week. I put something mundane in, like, oh, just finished work. And it'll be just, I'm so proud of you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
At least you can cherish their moments anyway. And like you said, even though, anyone that's listening at home, even though we do make mistakes, there is that turning point that we can make things right. Now, yeah, of course, there's been people that we may have really upset and that we will not be able to rekindle that relationship again, whether it be a friendship relationship or even a relationship with a family member. Sadly, we can't. But look at the fruit that has been coming out from your life of what you're doing now is absolutely amazing. So even though we go through all of these struggles, may we not have that relationship or whatever goes on, there is so much positive though anyway. At least you can stand tall and say, do you know what, I tried, but you know who you are today.
Yeah.
You know who you are today, and that's just amazing. So who in your time of now going through recovery, who was a crucial role in your recovery journey?
My nan, which is quite funny because she didn't really know what was going on. She had no idea, bless her. She was a lovely sort of, I don't want to say naive, but she saw the best in everything, and she lived in her own little world, and the world was so beautiful in her eyes. And it was her that, even though she didn't know what was going on and she knew how bad I was struggling, whatever happened, she was there. And she never judged me, never. And she would often go, I'm not going to ask questions. And that was quite nice, because sometimes I felt like I was always being interrogated by people around me. And sometimes if I was just having a bad day, I would just go and I'd just go and sit with her. And it would be the small things of just chatting about, I had this for lunch, or I did this today. And that was something for me. It was like, I've got that relationship back. Whatever happened, she's there. I made a lot of new friends, which was really helpful, because a lot of the people I surround myself with since I started recovery and now are very, very different to people I was around at that point in my life. So that's been really helpful, of having people that have got different life experiences. And I've met them through all different ways, through courses, through work. That's been really, really crucial. My partner now is not the one that was around in that time of my life. And that's been very helpful, because he is, again, like me, doesn't drink, we're very similar people in terms of that, which is really helpful to have that environment, that I'm not still around that. And something that I think the biggest person that's been crucial in it, and I hate saying this, and it feels like such a cliche, is me. Because I have been the one that has been there every step of the way. I've seen myself at my worst, I've been at my worst. And if I could go back and say to me then, this is what your life will look like now, I'd go, don't believe you. Absolutely not. No way. But I have stuck by myself, even on those days where I thought, I can't do this. There's that little voice in me that goes, but you have this far. It's just one more day. And I think getting like the right therapy and being honest about my struggles, that's been really helpful as well.
And I think that's so important. Like you said, your little nan. We should have little nans like that dotted all over the place, shouldn't we? That we could just call upon and just go and say, can I just have a word with you? And they just sit and listen. I think that's beautiful. There is a lot of people out there that do that, and I think it's great as well, isn't it? Probably people are sitting at home now going, "Oh wow, yeah, I would love a little nan like that." It's so amazing. Oh, definitely. Just one that I could just give a call and say, "Can you pop over for a cup of tea?" But that's
Biscuits.
beautiful. Yeah, tea and biscuits. Come on now. But I can visually see that, her, and it's so beautiful, isn't it? But I think as well, when you go to these different meetings, obviously we'll call it 12-step program. There may be other different men meetings, women meetings, whatever it may be. But them sort of meetings I've noticed as well, very much similar to what you were saying about your nan. You can just come as you are. There'll be no judgment, and you can just express and share about what you're up to in your life. Do you know what I mean? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Apologies about that.
Cool. It's fine, don't worry. I can sort it out, don't worry. I can't remember what I was saying now. Yeah, so with similar to what you were saying about with your nan, these meetings that you can go to are very much the same as well. You come into a room, whatever works for you. And I like to make that very clear to anyone that's at home as well. There is lots of different avenues, lots of different ways you can get support, help, go to treatment centers, get therapy work. There's loads of different amazing support out there. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find out what support there is because you've really got to search for it. And that's why, we've got you, Jazz, being able to share about what's worked for you. So I'm sure there's going to be ladies at home that are going to identify with your story, Jazz, and they're going to be like, oh my God, I need to give that a try. So I'm guessing then, how have you managed your rehabilitation then? So you've kind of put yourself through a treatment center in yourself, haven't you, really? You haven't put yourself in a actual treatment center. I'm guessing you've done it at home by yourself, by also going to, I'm guessing, meetings as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So it was all at home, which was rough. I'll be completely honest with you. It was rough. It was not pretty. It was not nice. And it was, to be quite honest, I think for the first few weeks it got worse. Like physically how I was feeling and mentally. And I was like, why am I doing this? I had moments being like, what am I doing? But I kept pushing through. And it was just honestly day by day. And I would just think, if I can get through today, and then I get the next day, I think it's just getting through today. What I think things that I found really difficult were things like trying to get back into a routine of normal life. Like I'd got to the point where I was like sleeping all day, staying up all night. So it was just trying to get back into that. I'm going to wake up in the morning, and even if all I do today is have a wash and put some clothes on, that's it. And it was honestly that gradual of, okay, if all I do today is get up, take my meds and eat some food, and I do it again. And every day it got a little bit more. And then it got to the point where I was like, I need to fill my life with things now, because now there's no substances or alcohol or addiction in my life. Who am I? Because I completely lost sense of what I was. That was me. I was just this fun-loving party person, it wasn't fun or party. It was obviously a lot deeper than that, but that's all I was known for. So it was trying to be like, hang on, what is me? What do I like? So I got into like different courses. I did some courses in puppetry for a while, which I met some amazing friends through. And then it kind of made me think, okay, what do I want to do with my life now? So I started volunteering for some local organisations, and I was like, that gave me kind of that satisfaction of, oh, this is actually a good feeling, and this makes me feel not numb was what I was chasing for. But this makes me feel something that isn't bad, and that then led on to amazing things like the job I'm in now, and like social groups. Like I go to quizzes and things now, which if you told me that a few years ago, I'd have been like, how boring are you? But yeah, I think something that also kind of helped me was when I started using TikTok to find out more about other people that were struggling with addiction. And that is when I started being so open, because I was kind of like, if I could see this, it would have helped me. So it was a whole journey of rediscovery, to be honest with you. It wasn't just getting off of things. It was a whole learning process of, who am I? Like, strip back without all of this. Who am I? And that can seem really, really intimidating, because it's like, I don't even know what I like to wear, or what do I have for breakfast? I've not had breakfast in like 8 years.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you've been able to go on that journey. And it is a painful journey, and it's a scary journey, you know. Coming from myself, I would openly hold my hands up right now, and I would say, even though I'm a grown ass man, I was a scared little boy that was petrified of what journey I was going to go on. But I think we can both agree it's the best journey we've ever chosen, because we're here present today, and there's so much amazing stuff that's been happening in our lives, and there's going to be many more great things that are going to be happening. So yeah, that's amazing what you've done. You know, just doing rehabilitation at home. Obviously, there's some people that may have to go to a treatment center, I'm sure, or people that have to go through a detox, and that's okay too. And then obviously there's a small amount of people, like including yourself, Jazz, that are able to do it in that way. And I completely take my hat to you for doing that. So how do you maintain everything today then? What do you do? What's your routine now with keeping clean and not going back to what you was before?
I think the key thing for me is honesty, which is like a polar opposite to where I was before, when I was hiding everything. Is I am probably maybe too honest at times with how I'm feeling. Because I kind of feel that the minute I start hiding things is when mentally it all starts stacking up and up and up. So it could be the smallest thing I share with people. I'm like, I had a bit of a rubbish day today, which at one point I never would have been honest about that. So that's a huge thing for me, is honesty and talking to the people around me, even if it's something as stupid as like, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm not quite feeling with it today. I may be a bit off. Another thing is keep doing the things that keep me well, because I think with a lot of people, the minute you start feeling better, it's easy to let that slip a little bit. So for me, one thing is taking my meds like religiously, as I am prescribed, as they should be taken, because that is when they work the best. Attending appointments, you know, not thinking, oh, you know what, I'm not going to go today. Every therapy session, no matter what, I will be there. Every appointment with a psychiatrist, I'll be there. Even physical health things like, oh, I'm due a blood test, I'm going to get that done as soon as I can. To try and stop those things mounting up. Another thing is I keep really busy, which is, whether or not that is necessarily always the best thing, because sometimes I do get a bit burnt out. But for me, it's knowing that my time is filled with stuff I enjoy doing and that is productive. And having a job, well, 2 jobs I love, that really, really helps that. Actually, at one point, anybody told me I had a job, that would have probably blown me away, let alone 2. So having that routine and sort of thinking, okay, I've got work tomorrow, and then I've got my appointment this day, and then I'll see my friends and we'll go to a quiz this day. And it's that balance of knowing I have to keep busy, but also having that bit of time that's like, literally, sometimes I dedicate time to fun. I will literally go through my phone, and sometimes I will block out whole days as days off to stop me sort of thinking I have to fill them. And another thing is to just sometimes just to be. It's something my great aunt said to me years ago when I was in one of the worst places of my life, and she said, just be. And I think about that a lot, because we can be so busy doing and trying to be the best at everything, or, you know, constantly pushing forward, that sometimes it's okay to just be. We're human beings, not doings. It's something I remind myself. And sometimes it's okay to just be in that moment. And if you're having a bad day, to just feel that, and to not let that inner critic be like, oh, you feel awful, and that's so bad, you're going backwards. Sometimes it's just, yeah, do you know what? Today is a day. It's not a good day, it's not a bad day, it's a day. And there'll be another day tomorrow, and that one might be different.
Beautiful way of putting it, Jazz. I think just how you've been speaking today is just, I've been so like just been like that, listening to you. And I'm sure probably people at home have just been listening engrossingly of what you've been talking about. And I think you've been really giving some great advice as well. And I think that was one thing I used to, even though when I was in the madness, when I was, taking drugs and drinking, if somebody said something like what you've been talking about, I would be like, oh my God, and it would hit there. And I would remember it, even though I'd be going back into doing the madness, it would always be in the back of my mind. Do you know what I mean? Oh, I remember that person said that. I remember that person said that. It all just comes flooding back. And I'm like, oh my God, it all makes sense why that person said that. Look at where I am today. So I really appreciate that. So what I want to know from you, Jazz, and I'm sure everybody at home is as well, especially the ladies, what advice would you give to someone who is currently struggling with alcohol or drug abuse and they are really sort of on the fence of going, I want to get help, but I love it too much? Be a bit like yourself, Jazz, yeah, I'll get help or whatever, but you don't really want it. What advice would you give them to that tonight?
To first of all kind of sit with those feelings, and that's uncomfortable and that is horrible, but that whole feeling of I want to but do I but don't I, and that was one of those things that would keep me up. Well, it wasn't just that keeping me up at the time, but when it would be 3 a.m. and you could hear the birds and you'd know you'd have to sleep and you'd be laying there and you'd think I want to but how. Something that I have said to somebody before is try it. And that sounds stupidly so simple, and such a simple way of putting it is that try it. There's no harm in trying it. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I stopped drinking or stopped doing drugs, it wasn't the first time I quit. Relapse is a thing that will happen, but dip your toe into that of what if I try recovery? What if I see what's out there? And I think for me, what I found difficult is that there's kind of that whole stereotype of the addicts look a certain way, or addicts do this or addicts do that, and you don't fit that mold of, you're not a 50-year-old guy that's in the pub every day and is there when they open getting their pint. Is first of all, to sit with those feelings, try it, and to research what's around you in terms of support. Because like some people, that first step is terrifying, and it was for me, which I think is why for so long I did it on my own, because I didn't know. There is so much out there if you look. And that might not necessarily even be groups to do with recovery, but it could be something as stupid as meeting a different group of people. It could be going to the library, just because it's a different environment and just seeing other people. And for me, it would be to be honest with the people around you as well. Because I think especially, I see it a lot in women or people who are born female, is that we're so used to kind of just fitting in, and that you don't make that fuss a lot of the time because it's kind of drummed into, that you behave a certain way and you don't make that fuss. And it's not making a fuss to speak up for what you need and to say, I am struggling with this, I am scared, and to get the people around you to help you with that. That you don't have to make yourself small to fit in. Find something that works. And if it doesn't work, the group you go to or the therapist you see, try again. Because I went through so many groups and so many therapists and so many different things before I found something that works. And it's also to believe in yourself, because you might not be the person or lady or whoever you want to be today, but one day you can be. And it's okay that you can't see that now, because that can seem a million miles away. But every day and every step you take and every meeting or every appointment, you're a little bit closer to it.
That's amazing, Jazz. Thank you. And so what are your, now looking forward for yourself, what are your sort of hopes for the future? So I know you said you've been doing getting the qualifications, particular things. So do you have any sort of anything looking forward? Do you have any sort of goals that you want to reach?
It's an interesting one, because there's so much I want to do. But something I find quite difficult is because for so many years I didn't think I was going to have a future. I kind of didn't prepare for it. Not that you can sort of prepare, but I never expected to have it. So everything I have now, I kind of view in a weird way as like bonus time. So I try and make the most out of everything, and really appreciating the small things. My goals very much, yeah, I'm doing another qualification that's starting in September. I've done a lot of different ones now. In one of the jobs I do, I am basically I help people not with addiction, but people who need that support. It's a very complicated job. And something I want to do is to give back in a weird little way. Is that I can't undo all the bad things I did. I can't right my wrongs. But if I can help somebody, one person, everything that has happened has led to something. And I want to spread that good in the world. And I want to show people that no matter what your past or where you came from, you can change that. So yeah, that's why I started posting on TikTok and stuff in the first place, is because, you can do it. So my goal really is to just keep progressing, and however that looks for me, that might change in a year's time. It might be I do a different qualification. Like I love learning and pushing myself is something for me. But it's basically just to keep going and to prove to myself that every day I'm doing something I'm proud of, and that is my only goal. Is to be true to myself now, and my morals. I've got quite a lot of strong morals, and I've got quite I guess, an interesting way of looking at the world. I do try and see the best in everything, which, given where I've come from, is something I never could have imagined. I think so, to just spread that little bit of hope and positivity. And if that's all I do in my life, I'd be quite happy with that.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing anyway. To be able to be recognised, to go, oh, I remember Jazz. She was always spreading positivity. That's amazing. And I think I always run by that motto as well. Even if you just help that one person, I feel like that's my job done. Awesome. Do you know what I mean? Even though there is so many people out there that need to be helped, but realistically, it has to come down to you, and like you said, you have to, it's how much you want it. And listening to your whole story has been such a inspirational journey. Has been very touching. And there's going to be a lot of people at home that are going to be touched by your story, that are going to relate to your story, maybe. Or maybe people that aren't going to relate to the story, but they're going to go, do you know what? I've had enough though. And I want what she's got. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That's the whole reason why we speak about these things. This is the whole reason why we're able to share our stories of strength and hope. Yes, it's doom and gloom, but oh my gosh, wait until the end. It's an inspiration, it's strength, it's hope. You've got things back, you're working, you're doing qualifications, you're doing quizzes that you never even thought you would do before. That is amazing. And that's great. And I hear that so many times from people. They do things that they've never even done before. Like things for myself, being able to go to the beach, right? What? Being able to be present, being present in the moment. I think it's quality. So Jazz, I just want to say thank you so much for this evening, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story tonight. And I just want to say to everybody at home, anything that may have touched you tonight, like Jazz said tonight, just go for it. Just try it. Like she said, just dip your toe in it and see what happens. I think you've explained it beautifully tonight, Jazz. So I want to thank you for that. So Jazz, before you go, we know you're 4 years clean. I'm sure there's going to be people that are going, come on, Josh, I just want to know her TikTok now. So what's your TikTok name so people can share?
I was just
have a look.
And I was like, do I even know it off the top of my head? Because I've changed it many times. But I haven't changed it in a while now. So it is Chaos, which is quite ironic. Chaos Jazz. So CHAOS JAZZ.
Awesome. I'll get everyone to give you a follow. But yeah, guys, definitely check out her TikTok. She's done some quality content, especially with going through the story of what she was going through before, where she is now. And honestly, if you see some of the photos of what she looked like and what she looks like now, it's amazing. You're a miracle, Jazz. You're an absolute miracle. And Jazz, I hope that this will keep on going on. May there be many more years that are going to be added onto your clean time, and there's going to be so many women that you're going to touch through doing this. And wherever you go, you're going to be a blessing and you're going to be a shining light. So you carry on doing that, Jazz. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks for having me on.
All right, cheers.
Great to share it.
Awesome.